Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Teach, Seek, Repeat. My name is Dylan.
And my name is Hayden.
And we're back again with another episode. It's just us two. Did we do a guest last week? We did,
yes,
didn't we?
we had, because we recorded it a while ago. That's why we're confused. We had Kate on, didn't we?
And we have loads of guests lined up, obviously.
Yes, we definitely haven't done that thing again where we got like 4 in a row and then we stopped booking anyone.
We are always on the lookout for guests, so we'll see in the future. But back to us for now. And I've reflected on it a few times. People do like it when it is just us, though. Like,
do they?
They love the idea of the guest, and I always got... like, not scared, but I remember when we first got guests and then we went to, again, a stint of just us two. I was really worried that like, everyone would think, oh, it's just these two guys again. But
they love us, Dylan.
Yeah, they love us.
I love that.
They love us.
Well,
and if they could choose to vote for us, they would. They definitely would. And I'm not voting on my mind for any reason at all. Not anything's happened this week.
Nothing to do with the title of
Nothing
this
to do with the
episode.
title of this episode, which we're going to talk about later.
Yeah.
So anyway, before we get into it, anything you want to let me know about him?
Right now, I don't know about you, but I'm hyper aware of where I'm talking. So Dylan and I, ignore what we said the other week where we were like, oh, we've upgraded our audio. It's much better now. And it was the worst sounding episode we've ever had. So last week's episode didn't sound that great. And this week, we're really trying to talk into the microphone. So if this sounds great and crispy, then you know why.
And if it doesn't, then you also know why.
If it doesn't, then I've just doubled down on the idea that we think this sounds better, but doesn't. Anyway, I'm all good. How are you? Your week's been all right?
Yeah, fine. It's half term. We've made it to half term. So lots of people listening to this. Again, I know we've got international listeners, so I really do apologise if it's not half term for you or you're still working. But it's half term here in the UK. And I'd forgotten it was half term because obviously Hayden and I, we work Monday to Wednesday and we do our tutoring business on the rest of the week. But that meant that half term for me actually started on Wednesday. But it didn't register with me because we still had stuff to do. You know, our working week wasn't over. So I wasn't like have that huge relief of, oh, it's half term. And it got to Friday. And I'm sure Hayden's going to talk to you about his barbecue in a minute. But we fired up a barbecue at Hayden's. He wanted to test it out. Oh, yeah. Oh, don't worry, Hayden. We're going to let you talk about it very soon. And because obviously we're British and as soon as it's sunny, we're like, right, barbecue. If we don't have a barbecue, then we're wasting the day.
Yeah.
And I remember I was sat eating an Oreo sandwich, like ice cream thing. Because
Oreo sandwich.
I'm having a bit of sugar now. It's summer again. Just Oreo sandwich. Just in a baguette. And I got a text from my colleague who I share the class with saying, you come to the pub? And I was like, eh? I was like, they're all gone to the pub for end of term. And I was like, oh, you did mention that last week. I really struggled to pass things over between my week. My week seems like 2, really is split in half.
Yeah.
Anything to do with school, I kind of forget about it until I'm back in school.
Yeah, by Wednesday evening it's done. It's gone.
Yeah, it's like that Apple TV show. Did you watch it? Severance.
No.
So the whole point of Severance is there's like this technology a bit further in the future where they implant something into your brain and you go to work, but when you go to work you pass through like this, I don't know, this technology, this like you go into this lift anyway and you go to your floor to do your work, but you completely switch off. It's almost like you turn into a different person.
Oh wow.
So the point being like
efficient sort of
yeah
thing.
You literally, from your point of view, you walk into work, you walk into the door and immediately you walk out of the door. And that whole 8 hours of work you've done...
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, that whole 8 hours of work you've done, you literally do not know what goes on.
I've heard good things about that.
It's an amazing
mean to watch
show.
it at some point.
Yeah, because the whole point is what you're doing there from the outside, it's great because like you don't have to experience work. If you happen to have a really dull, boring job, you don't have to experience work. Isn't that cool? But the whole issue, like the morality, which was really interesting, was you create you on the inside.
Yeah, I was going to
say.
So
you're also forcing yourself to only experience work.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is like, is that person as morally valuable as you?
That's so cool.
And you follow both kind of people.
Yeah,
Adam
yeah.
Scott is the lead in it, and he's unreal as an actor because he's kind of like this depressive guy who's had a pretty bad life and his wife passed away and all this stuff on the outside.
Yeah.
On the inside, it's hilarious because he's this like, hey, I love my job, like an office, like, you know.
No way, because he doesn't know what's going on his outside life.
And exactly. And the whole point is in the job, there's this new woman who starts and she slowly is like, what? All I'm doing is this is awful. This is terrible. What's going on?
Yeah.
What's on the other side of this lift? And like it develops into them trying to break out and stuff. But it turns out that, spoiler alert, if anyone's going to watch this, that that woman is one of the board members of the company who are doing this. And she said on the outside, I'll prove how this isn't morally bankrupt. This is brilliant. I'll prove it. I'm going to do it myself.
That's hilarious.
And she ends up breaking out of it in the end. And it's a really
cool. Well,
good
thanks
show.
for ruining it completely within 3 minutes.
There's a bit of evidence, Hayden, a bit of research. I always say to people that if you know how a show ends, you scientifically enjoy it more.
Oh, really?
You scientifically enjoy things more if you have to spoil
I
it.
won't enjoy it if I don't watch it because I don't want it now because you spoiled it. So that's funny. Yeah. It does sound good, though.
Yeah. Anyway,
good.
really went off track there. So I did hint at your barbecue. Come on, talk about it.
There's not much to say, really.
There's loads of people want to hear about it, obviously. So.
Of course.
I think that dentist from last week's thinking about the barbecue.
Wow. You ruined my next joke.
Sorry.
You ruined it. I was about to do a whole bit then on pretending that dentists have called me from the Dentists Association to not talk about that. Oh, thanks, Dylan. Much funnier when you do it. But back to the barbecues. Embracing the dad life.
Yeah.
And I was just saying, just before we started recording this podcast, I was like, oh, guys, this will be funny. This will get him. This will get him.
Nothing gets past me, Hayden.
Nothing,
How's
including joy. Yeah, barbecue's great. So between us, me and Dylan are fully embracing the stereotypical dad life. We were standing around the barbecue the other day, Dylan in his Crocs, talking about golf. Me looking at my lawn, thinking, I wonder if my lovely freshly planted seeds are growing, cooking on the barbecue. And I just feel it's good. It's a good place to be.
Are we basic? What's the word? I was going to say the B
you
word.
say basic.
But it's not. What's the word for a dad? Basic dad?
Don't know. Just basic dad.
Doesn't really work, does it?
Got the dad bods.
We had them for a while. We had them way before we were dads.
Someone at work the other day, what was it? They were talking about being on a diet. I was like, yeah, tell me about it. I'm kind of trying to go on a diet. They're like, oh yeah, the old dad bod. I was like, yeah, I'm trying to get back down to a dad bod. I was like, I've gone past that. I was like, dad bod's the goal.
Yeah. It's like when we were younger, do you remember? People would talk about, especially the girls, would talk about like wanting to be curvy. This whole thing. I want to be curvy. And what curvy actually meant in the 90s was stick thin. Like stick thin. And there was this whole horrible like environment of girls like thinking they had to be so skinny.
Yeah.
And it's with dad bod, I kind of feel like we're moving towards that a little bit because people say dad bod, they don't mean an actual stereotypical body of a dad with a huge beer belly. They mean like quite a skinny bloke who's still a bit like he's wider at the top than he is at the bottom and has a bit of a stomach. Like dad bod doesn't mean like, you know, hugely overweight and again it's like it's turning into that, but it's like that's all right, I got a dad bod. It's like that's not what they mean though.
They're getting better and better, these old dad bods, aren't they? Harder to achieve.
Is the dad Chris Pratt? Oh, okay. Well, in that case, that was that bod.
Yeah, it comes with, somehow it's attached to money as well now. Dad bod, yeah, you got to be earning a couple of million a year as an actor.
Yeah, dad bod is actually just to do with your salary. It's very strange. But I want to talk about Crocs quickly because you mentioned Crocs.
Yeah, go on.
I am really embracing, like, you know, there's a few things you go through, like watershed moments growing up where you slowly realize that you are an adult. And to me, one of them is I can really like separate people out here where people our age and their opinion on Crocs, because I think it's very ingrained with us growing up that Crocs were horrendous. Yeah. Crocs were horrendous. Young people now are embracing it, but anyone who's in like their 30s, like turning 30, late 20s, early 30s, I can tell a lot about them by their reaction when I say Crocs. Because if they're just like, oh, Crocs, oh my God, I wouldn't be caught dead in a pair of Crocs. I'm like, you've never worn them. Because I was the same, my friend, and I don't judge you for thinking this, but as soon as I put a pair of Crocs on, I thought, my life's about to change for the better. And I probably exclusively wear Crocs. I think I've said it before on the podcast. My Crocs are my slippers around the house.
Well, I have to admit, I obviously tried to wind you up the other day because, you know, as you know, Dylan doesn't like being, you know, his things being touched and all those sorts of things. We've talked about Dylan before, you know, go back and listen to the episode about Dylan. But
is that one? Is that just one episode?
That was a bit weird talking about you, and I was cracking up at the idea that your mum didn't clock on that you were a bit strange when you were eating silica packages in Clark's or whatever it was.
It's when it says do not eat. I think I'll taste it.
But wouldn't eat anything else. Anyway, oh God, that story is still my favourite story. But yeah, so I put Dylan's Crocs on. I've never worn Crocs, and I am one of those guys like, Crocs? No one wear Crocs. They look stupid. Put them on, and I was a little bit annoyed in my head because I thought, well, these are nice. My first thought was, ooh, these feel good.
Do you like in the movies when like they rushes into their brain because they have like this moment and like just like Ratatouille when the food critic eats the food and he gets back to his childhood.
Big wide eyes.
When you wear Crocs, you have that moment of raw comfort and joy.
Yeah. I'm now thinking, it might happen. I reckon for my birthday, someone's going to get me Crocs because I've mentioned this. I reckon Lauren is clocked onto
You're
that.
saying it quite loudly. I reckon Lauren, the other side of this door.
Our producer who we just hide away.
Producer?
Yeah, and make it sound good. I reckon
we can blame her for the sound issues.
Yes.
I think. It was Lauren.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Crocs.
But general, Crocs amazing. But yeah, pretty good week. I mean, I'm quite excited. It's half time. I feel like my time doesn't exist anymore.
You've been messaging me at 5 a.m. a lot. What's going on?
Rory's getting up at 5 a.m. This is unreal. Any other parents out there, please message me and tell me I'm not alone, because I'm pretty sure I can't. I'm obviously not the only one. I hate that phrase. Am I the only one who? And then insert something which is so normal.
Yeah,
am I the
generic.
only one who has Weetabix with milk? No, of course you aren't. What do you mean? Am I the only one who sits on their chair with their bum? No.
Am I the only man in the world sitting down to wee? Yeah. Well, maybe.
No, I think I know more blokes who sit down to wee than who stand up at this point.
Yeah, it's comfier.
We are entering the zone of just doing what feels good and not what is proper, and that is what I'm here for. Anyway, Rory wakes up. Honestly, there is about a 4-minute window, which is 4:58 to 5:02, and he wakes up in that window every single day, and it doesn't matter. This is what I don't get. If every day he had 4.5 hours sleep and woke up, I'd be like, oh, his body clock's developing. He could go to bed at 6 or 8:30, right? He would wake up at 1:30 in the night and at 5 in the morning. Yeah. And when he wakes up at 5, I think, a bit of food and like a bit of a rock, maybe I'll have another hour. No. Wakes up at 5 and it's hilarious because there's a difference. When he wakes up and we know we'll go back to sleep, he kind of just like
fusses.
Because he clearly wants to be asleep
and
still.
You know.
Yeah. 5 a.m, right? Because he is up, his head is like turning, looking, because he knows we're in the bed next to him, and he's like turning, and he just goes, and I'm like, oh my god, no. As soon as I hear the you're not going back down.
It's just you. He's just mini you, isn't he? He's probably looking for silica packets.
Is it me? Do I do that? Do I get up and whack my head up and go, Lion?
Honestly, yeah. When you're not around other people, that's your true self. That is you.
Yeah, that's the other thing about having a kid. Anything that he develops that's annoying, it's going to be just me. Yeah. So it's going to be hard to be annoyed at it. It's like, I did that.
Yeah, because you'll remember your child and be like, oh, yeah, that was me. Well, it's weird though, isn't it? Like, think about the 5 a.m. thing. It's strange. I don't know if there's a link between the daylight that comes out at 5 a.m. and him getting up every single day. I don't know if there's something there that might be a reason.
I tried to convince Lauren that it's to do with that.
Every day,
and she was like, nah.
No, it wouldn't be that one logical thing.
I think it is, though. I think it is. And then she was like, I don't think so. And I was like, this is just, neither of us know.
Yeah, because animals historically don't wake up when it gets light, do they? That is definitely a thing. They do wake up generally after.
I'll tell you what is weird, though. We're going really off on a tangent here. Like, why do we go to sleep for 8 hours? Like, aren't we really vulnerable as animals? I know we're not now because we've got buildings and stuff. Like, how on earth did we evolve to be unconscious for 8 hours?
I often think that. We're such pathetic versions of our primitive selves, aren't we? Honestly, if you just took away my house and money right now and had nothing, right, I'd be dead in a week. Honestly, I wouldn't know what to do. If you put me in the best place for it was easy survival, I still wouldn't. I'd be like, someone feed me. Someone give me water. I wouldn't know what to do.
You got no survivor skills. Bear Grylls be laughing. Tell you what, finally. He'll be there licking his leg. Yeah, finally, after all these years. Yeah. Bear Grylls knows what to do.
Bear Grylls.
We don't.
Bear Grylls and Ray Mears.
Ray Mears was the better version of Bear Grylls.
Yeah, I used to love his stuff.
Bear Grylls is a Tory fraud. No, sorry, we're not talking about politics.
No politics today, Dylan. Come on.
Or at all.
No, not at all.
Just wait half an hour.
No, we're talking about sats, right?
Yeah, let's go into our little chat because this is the week as of recording. If you're listening to this episode the day it comes out or the week it comes out, last week the sats were released. So the embargo's been lifted. Sats were taken by year 6 children 2 or 3 weeks ago. We're going to go through the papers, have a little reflection.
Yeah, quick reflection.
And quite a few talking points online, a few talking points. Hayden likes to go through the test, being a year 6 teacher, and he found a few very, very, very weird things. So we're going to have a reflection there. And reflection rhymed really nice with election. And it's not that I'm political or anything. I don't actually want to talk
about politics. We just used it in the title.
Yeah. So should we talk about the sats?
Yeah, stay around for the politics.
Okay, Hayden, are you all set with your framing, your crotch?
Yeah, I realised we're further back this time. I was like, I don't want my legs in it.
Anyone watching on Spotify is in for a treat for the first 15 minutes.
Anyone that wasn't is now looking at it. Hopefully not.
We're going to see a big spike on the retention, like someone rewinding. That's weird.
God, what's wrong with us?
Right, Hayden, you're a year 6 teacher.
I am.
The sats were a couple of weeks ago. We go through all the papers and stuff for our tutoring. Like we like to keep ahead on it and do videos and stuff and explanations. Where would you put this year's sats papers on a scale of incredibly unfair and horrible to too easy and there's no point doing it, everyone can do all these questions?
Overall, bang in the middle, I think.
And is that a good thing? Would you say?
I think it's weird. It's a good thing in the context of sats. Like whether Okay, so just within the confines of, let's just assume we all think SATs is okay.
Sure.
This set of papers was okay compared
This
to previous
episode's
years.
not going to be discussing whether we should abolish SATs or not.
We have done that.
Yeah.
We might mention it briefly, but we
Yeah,
have
of course.
done an in-depth discussion about the SATs in general. But no, if I think about the last SATs and all of the controversy around the reading paper being a bit too hard and stuff, this one was still quite tricky, but it wasn't as bad as that. The maths I thought was completely fair. I know you've had a little look at the maths papers. And the GPS was all right as well. I just thought the whole process, that is exactly what SATs is like. I didn't really have any major issues. There's a few little bits we can pick apart in a bit, but they're small enough where it wasn't enough to be like, oh, this whole SATs was a sham. It was so unfair for these kids. It was a fair bunch of tests.
So as an insight then for anyone who wasn't involved in the SATs, whether they're a teacher or even just a parent, what was your experience with the children sitting the papers? Because I think a big thing a lot of people are interested in is their well-being.
Yeah.
That's kind of a big problem sometimes, I think, for a lot of parents especially. So again, having administered the SATs and gone through it with your cohort, how did you find that?
Well, that's interesting, actually. Let's whiz through it, because any of this stuff, if you do write to us, if you have a comment on us, I know Dylan deals with Instagram, but please, if you've got something to say, because I'm genuinely so interested in other schools and how this happened, right? So this is me going through the paper. So we did GPS, and as always, I think the GPS is weirdly timed. The majority of the children sitting the test were finished with 20 minutes left.
Really?
15 minutes left. And I find that's quite often the case with GPS, because it's just 50, typically really quick 1-mark questions. And
how long do they get?
They get 45 minutes
right.
on it. And I do find that children generally whiz through that, which I find strange, because then when they do the reading paper, I think the next day, the reading paper to me, every single year, I always think, why is it so harshly timed? They get so much extra time for the GPS. And the same group of children, by the way, so I had about 30 to 40 with me in the hall, because I was administering the bulk of the kids in our school. The same group of kids that are all finished and sat there flicking through their GPS papers with 20 minutes to go were all, generally all struggling to finish that paper. I saw that 10-minute timer sort of get to 10 minutes left. And I was looking around the hall and I was thinking, wow, half of these kids are just scrambling now to the third text, which typically requires almost 20 minutes to do. Yeah, like a bit more than a third, maybe
so
25. And I just thought this just seems wrong. Like, there's no way these kids have all just suddenly now, I've forgotten how to read. I was fine at GPS yesterday. It's like, no, the timings are just off. And I think that every year.
Do you think that's the biggest impact on well-being for the children then? Like, in terms of, we're talking about the difficulty, the act of actually doing the test, the timers. Is that what you notice as a bit of a red flag?
I'd say that, yes. And I'd say it's 50-50 with the difficulty.
Sure.
I think for well-being with kids, if they find it challenging, if they find it too challenging, whatever that threshold is for them, I think that's really negative on their well-being, because it makes them feel rubbish.
Sure.
And I equally think that for any difficulty, for any kid, if they feel like they're stressed because they're not finishing it and they're not getting an opportunity to show what they can do, whether they're really high ability or not, I think that's also a massive contributor to them feeling really stressed after it. Like, I didn't get time to do the last 3 questions. And
which they could have got right, though.
They could have got right, and they really wanted to, because maybe it's important
or at least
to them.
have a go at it.
Yeah, I'm like, that's just not fair. So I think the reading comp just needs more time. I don't know why it's an hour. The texts seem to be getting slightly longer over the years as well, so it takes a bit more time to read. The questions are just getting a little bit more
Well, is that really
fiddly.
testing their comprehension? I've always found that weird in terms of a timer for comprehension. I know why timers exist in tests. I understand that there are reasons. So if someone's listening going, well, of course you need a timer. Yeah, you're testing, can they get through a text quick enough? And, how quick do you have to understand something before you don't really properly understand it and all that kind of stuff. But I still, my gut instinct with comprehension is that if it takes a child an extra minute to get to the right answer, I don't think that matters. That's my gut opinion there.
I agree. I think there is a place for word reading speed in terms of some sort of measure, maybe, of a kid's ability to read. But yeah, I agree generally, and especially when the majority of kids are struggling to read it in that time. I'm like, come on, this is not even reflecting the average reader this sort of time. So that was mental. And then with the maths, arithmetic, you've seen the arithmetic paper. I'll ask you what did you think of the arithmetic paper in terms of difficulty and stuff?
I've got probably a potentially controversial opinion on arithmetic in that having seen every arithmetic paper for years now, because like you said, I always go through it and model answers and do them. I think, okay, you can come back to this. I think that the average child in year 6 should aim for full marks in arithmetic paper. And I know there'll be some children who can't some children who can. And when it comes to reasoning, the average child absolutely would be nowhere near full marks.
No.
Same for reading comp. Same for GPS, actually, in my opinion. Like, you could do well in GPS, but there's a lot of weird stuff in GPS that come up. When it comes to arithmetic, the processes involved in that question, you could write them down and get every single process that will come up before the test comes up.
Yeah.
You will get an addition question with one number has 2 decimal places, one number has 3 decimal places. You will get 2 fractions that have 1 as the numerator that you multiply together. You will get a fraction multiplied by divided by a whole number. You will get short division, you will get long division, you will get multiplication. It's the same. So my whole point there is, I suppose, over the course of 4 years, or from year 3 up to year 6, I think that as teachers we should be aiming for them to be able to answer every question. And I think in year 6 especially, the average child should sit down and being able to prove over the last couple of months that they can answer every single question on the test.
It sounds like a really big stretch target, and I think I want to just dive into it a bit more, because like you said, with other tests, the average child, I don't think should be going for
the
full
50th
marks.
percentile. If you lined up the children in the year, in the whole country who are in year 6, if you picked out the middle child, my opinion is they should be able to answer every question on that test.
It should be aiming for 40. It's funny because I don't think the average child should be aiming for full marks in maths in general.
No.
But the arithmetic paper is just different, isn't it? It is just very, very different. And I agree. I think some people probably listen to that thinking, come on, that's mad. And realistically, the average child should probably be getting somewhere between 30 and 35.
I was going to say it's probably 30.
But I think what I really want to stress is that you're talking about aiming. I think the average kid should aim for 40 out of 40.
And that's why I tried to be really clear when I said should have proven, honestly, in the months beforehand, having had 4 years of Key Stage 2, that there should be nothing that could come up on that test which they have no idea about. There might be something on the test, like maybe for example, long division's one I can think of straight away, where working out the multiples of 49 might be really tricky for a child. Or if they haven't learned their times tables, a lot of the questions are going to be absolutely not being able to get there. But my point is, you should aim by year 6 to know your times tables.
Should the average year 6 kid know their times tables?
Exactly.
Yeah, the average kid should know their times tables by year 6.
And if anyone's there going, well, there's some kids who can't. It's like, I know, and I never expect them to get 40. So that's my opinion. And having looked through the test, I thought the only thing that really struck a chord with me, well, there were 2 things, where they, at every single opportunity, it felt like they formatted the question in a way that was different to what they thought the kids might see. They very, very, very often, almost too often, put the answer box first, equals, and then the question, which is such a small thing, but and I've got nothing wrong with that being on the paper, but it felt like they did that about 8 times, and it was
more
like
than usual.
And it was like, if you're gonna test children on that and you know children won't get it, you are essentially saying they're not going to get it 8 times now instead of just like 3 or 4. And the other thing that really stood out to me, which was crazy, because this genuinely doesn't matter in my opinion, is the answer to almost every fraction question was a fraction that could have been simplified. So, for example, the answer I think to one was something like 4/6. The answer to another one was 14/21. And there was, all I mean by that is you will get the mark if you don't bother touching it. Like, so if it's let's say it's 25 14ths, take away 4 14ths. You will get a mark for putting 21 14ths. That's fine. But then if you try to simplify it and do it wrong, because you see it could be simplified, and for whatever reason, maybe you put 14/7 or whatever it is you do. If you then try and do an extra step and then put that down, you'd get it wrong.
You would.
Even though you've done the subtraction absolutely correctly and you've got the right answer. And I just thought, wow, there could have been some points at least when it wasn't an option to simplify.
Just
where you weren't even. Because if you're going to get a mark for not simplifying, that's such a weird extra step that you can only lose by doing that extra
step. What you're
highlighting
now really is that really nuanced stuff that I think teachers, when you're in year 6, you just sort of think, we're just playing a game at this point.
Absolutely.
We're playing a game because you know what? On average, if you had 2 classes and one of them you really explicitly drilled to them because you know how the SATs works, right? You would drill to them, never simplify your answer unless it tells you to. And the other one, they never mentioned it, but they were taught simplifying, like they both would have been.
Exactly.
Then there's probably a high chance that one class would outperform the other, not based on ability, but because they know the test technique, and the other ones were trying to do something. And there's obviously going to be the occasional accidental error. Any extra steps opens up the possibility of accidental error. It's nothing to do with ability.
Absolutely.
It's just it's really funny, isn't it?
So that was my gut instinct having looked through the arithmetic paper. But I thought the content, as always, I think it's going to be really hard to find a year where you look at the arithmetic test and you think, oh, that's tricky, because you just know what's going to come up.
Every year there's like 1 or 2 questions you think, oh, didn't really picture like that with my kids before.
I think there was one year, it was something like I think it was 4.25 times.
No, 2.25 times 39.
There you go, 2.25 times 39.
Sure that's what it was.
Which, again, is not actually that tricky. You do 39 times 2, 39 quarters. It's almost like a improper fraction to a mixed number question, or if you want to make it into decimals and do 0.75, whatever you want to do. But I felt like, again, if you're drilling as a year 6 teacher, past test questions, past test papers,
it's never come up.
It's actually, I don't think it's come up before where something and a quarter times 39.
Never. In fact, the only thing that's come up with a mixed number times an odd number is 1.5.
Right, there you
go. We've had I remember the classic one, 1.5 times 59. Was that in the reasoning paper? Something like that. And there was that reasoning question that was like something to do with the days on a different planet. Yeah, that was
doing that question, that is a curriculum question.
Yeah, and actually,
so it's a good thing I think that came up.
It's quite funny because I taught that fairly recently as well.
Yeah,
I was we were just looking at numbers and just mixed numbers.
Doing the curriculum.
I was like, if you ever get a mixed number times a number, then just partition
split it up.
Whole number times this and do the fraction times this. So just put it back together.
And that's where actually I would say the more they can find for those questions in arithmetic, I actually get behind that for them. Because again, what you're doing is the opposite of what you said. Someone who's been drilled to test technique, if they only ever use the same bank of questions when it comes to the test, those test techniques are going to shine through. And I think you should be looking actively as a question writer to find curriculum questions that aren't too difficult but pitch nicely for the curriculum that test children on their knowledge, not on their test technique.
The question should be when making it is okay, if a child understands this concept, can they answer this question?
Which
if it's yes, then cool, use it.
It's going to come really nicely into a discussion we're going to have in a minute about specific questions. I think maybe, go on.
Just final reflection on the maths then. Realistically, I agree with the arithmetic. I think most kids, timing-wise, they were right with it. Especially I had quite a lot of more able mathematicians in there, so they were finishing it quite rapidly.
What about the reasoning then? Because there was a bit of a furore.
The only thing this year, it was the same last year, I think, or the year before, I can't remember. But reasoning paper 2 was like distinctly harder than reasoning paper 3.
And that comes before, right?
Yeah, so the second paper they did, there's 3 papers altogether. The second paper they did was so much harder than the third paper. And although there's the objective, there's nothing really wrong with that. I don't like it when it's that way around because the only thing I think can happen from that is it just gets some of the kids' backs up and it knocks their confidence for that last test. I just think the hardest one should be at the end, full stop.
Because children are used to that, and then I know a lot of children who after that first, because the next test is on the next day, so you've got a whole night of worrying. And I know a lot of children were thinking, well, if paper 2 was like that, oh my gosh, paper 3 is going to be horrendous. And that was a bit weird. There's just no need to do that.
Yeah, it's just unnecessary. That would be my only reflection, really.
Well, we're going to talk very specifically about some questions. So we're going to dive in now because there are a few questions every year. Like we've said in general, we think it was quite a fair test. I think
it was quite a fair test.
There's always going to be tricky stuff, and you can pick out. Last year there was a bit more than usual, and there's a bit of a furore, especially around reading. But there were still some questions this year which we just saw when we looked through, and then also online there's been a lot of debate and discussion about them. My opinion on some is different to your opinion on some. We have a good chat about whether it's good or not to give 10-year-olds this test.
Let's start with the reading because there's one question we've got here from the reading paper because I was looking for it very, very intricately the other day and I was looking at the mark scheme for every single question as well. And I stumbled across this question right at the beginning of the paper and I genuinely couldn't believe my eyes. I had to message Dylan because normally I jump the gun with these things and he'll be like, no, you've just not seen this thing. So I messaged Dylan and be like, is it just me or is this question completely wrong and actually just broken? So here it is. Question 3 of the reading comp paper. So you'd assume early on, but easier as well. It says, how can you, and this is the exact quote, by the way, how can you tell streaked tenrecs are social animals? For anyone listening that's not in the stats world, the tenrecs are these little creatures that the whole text was all about. So that's not just like already ludicrously hard. It was a non-fiction text about that. So they would have had some context. How can you tell they're social animals? Now, the text says in a paragraph, a very short paragraph, it says, both lowland tenrecs and streaked tenrecs are very social animals.
Cool, I can tell then.
That's how I can tell. It literally says that. And then the question says, how can you tell that streaked tenrecs are social animals? Also, question 3, you assume it's going to be easy. And I looked at the mark scheme, and it's marked as a retrieval question as well. So it's not even an inference question where it's like you have to find evidence to do it. It's labelled as a retrieval question.
It should just be in the text.
You just find the answer in the text, and it's there. And then, obviously, me and a lot of the kids, this is how I would have answered it. When I was walking around, I looked at that and I thought, I'm going to answer that as, I would answer that as, because the text says they're very social animals. Because it does. It literally says that. I looked at the mark scheme, it says, do not accept the text says that they are social animals or any reference to the fact that the text says they're social animals.
Yeah.
But the question is, how can you tell they're social animals?
It's unreal.
I just think it's mad because really what they're trying to do there is very poorly worded.
Very poorly worded.
What they're trying to say is, what evidence is there to prove that they are social animals. And what they should have done is what they've always done in the past, which is just quote the actual text.
Yeah.
Say, like, show the quote in quotation marks and say, what evidence backs up the fact that they're social animals? Because then you obviously can't use the quote that's in the question.
Yeah. Because I suppose a lot of children, or defenders of this even, might say some children will know that they shouldn't repeat the question.
Yeah.
So if the question says, how can you tell street tenrecs are social animals? I would argue it's pretty obvious from a teaching point of view, and some children might know, you don't simply repeat the question in the answer because that's mad. However, in this exact case of how it's worded, that is not wrong. So for a mark scheme to say that it's wrong is unbelievable. And what it's actually doing is undermining the text as a whole. Because what it's suggesting there is, no, you can't actually trust the text unless you then back up with more stuff from the text
mad,
as well.
isn't it? Never happened before like that.
Yeah.
I agree. That's never happened.
Yeah.
It's always been the case where there isn't a direct thing from the text you can quote you. There's only evidence to back it up. Yeah. Or there's not.
And if you write the quote in the question and then you answer justifying the quote by writing the quote, that's very specifically what we teach children to not do.
Yeah.
If you have a question saying, how do you know? or can you explain something from the text? If it's just written in that very simple turn of phrase, you're no longer explaining it, you're just repeating it. Yeah. So the explanation would be, and it would force you to go to the text, find the quote, and then read on. Yeah. And that's a comprehension skill.
The question could be like, how can you tell that street tenrecs like living together?
Sure.
And it's like, okay, because the text says they're very social animals.
Exactly.
That's fine.
That. And you kind of test in word meaning to a degree there, in a way, because you need to know what social means.
Yeah. But that's a normal question.
But that's comprehension.
That's what come up. That just really annoyed me, because do you know what? There's going to be a huge amount of children who have been drilled. Everything you do comes from the text. They found the evidence, and they will just logically put, because the text says they're very social. And they'll be thinking, it's question 3, it's an easy question.
And taken out from that even, there'll be a whole bunch of children who have got it right. That's the end of it. There'll be a whole bunch of children who have answered that question correctly. Who, because of the mark scheme and because of the jumping through hoops that they want you to do, because the question doesn't test what the question writer wanted to test, they've just made the mark scheme wrong. Because they're like, no, I don't want to test that. It's like, well, write a different question then, because that question isn't doing it. Yeah. It's unbelievable. I'd say that, to me, I'm going to say right now, that is the only question out of the entirety of these tests which I think is just completely wrong. I think there are some we can argue are weird. There are some we can argue are maybe too far difficult. It's
just straight up a mistake.
I'd argue that is just a terrible question.
Yeah, it's wrong. Yeah, they wouldn't be able to defend that, I don't think.
No. I think it's a good point. Now we can move on to another question that popped up. And again, I'd love to know, by the way, anyone listening, what your opinion is on this. And especially if you're out of school, are you aware this is what we're asking children to do when they're 10? And do you think that's appropriate? Because I think that's, again, it's a separate conversation, but I think it's really important. Yep. Or if you are a teacher, did you notice some children really struggling on something?
How do people get in touch with us, though?
They will find us on Instagram at Teach Street Repeat, blah, 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 blah.
There.
Let me try one more time. At Teach Street Repeat Podcast. Find us on Instagram. That is honestly the best way to get in touch, because I don't actually really check anything else. So if you just go to Instagram, just do that. You might find a few reels. Again, I'm not sure if they're political. I'm not a political person.
No, we're not talking about that today.
No, we're not talking about that at the end of this episode. We're going to talk about politics. So this is a really good point to come on to now, because Hayden and I, we love arguing.
We do.
Some might say it's debating. I'd say it's just straight up arguing.
Yeah. Sometimes for the sake of it.
Yeah, because it's fun.
Even if we agree.
I often take up an opposing view of Hayden just to test his opinion sometimes.
Opposing a view. Not opposing.
Opposing. This is from the GPS paper. You sent me this.
Yeah.
Go on, you explain.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And
it's
number 50.
Change your tune.
Great question in terms of to talk about.
Okay.
So it's number 50. It's the last question on the GPS paper, which is quite often really hard. Like if you look back at all the previous papers, it's often number 50 is proper nasty. And it says this: circle the two adjectives that are synonyms in the sentence below. And then the sentence is: the street was lined with grand houses. The modest cottage stood out amongst its imposing neighbours. So that's the question. Go on, Dylan. You reflect first of all. What do you think about, if you saw that for the first time, what do you think kids should be doing to solve that question? Okay.
I'm actually going to flip it very quickly before I tell you that, because the context was Hayden sent me this saying, this is incredibly true. This is not good. This is a bad question.
Nasty. I didn't say that. I said it was really difficult.
Well, but then also a lot of people were saying that the answers are not synonyms.
Yeah.
And then my point was, that they are. So, we can talk about how difficult this question is.
That's where we disagree, I guess, because I don't think they are synonyms, really.
Still?
No, not anymore. I've gone back around to it.
So, let's go through it then. So, my point here is circle the 2 adjectives that are synonyms in this sentence below. Firstly, it says circle the 2 adjectives. So, straight away, what I would expect children to do in this case is you need to find 2 adjectives.
Yeah.
I'd be looking through the text and I'd be finding 2 adjectives. You might argue, well, that's tricky because you might find 2 and then there's actually another one.
Yeah.
Because they're very used to having questions earlier on, which are circle the 2 adjectives in this sentence. And there are only 2 and that's the point. So firstly, I'd say that's something you could argue is just a bit of a trick. Circle the 2 adjectives, but if you read on, that are synonyms. So that suggests that there are maybe more than 2.
Which are.
So I would look at this sentence and I'd say, okay, well, the adjectives, there are only 3 actually, and they come before a noun. So that's very bread and butter for a year 6 child to be able to do. So the adjectives are grand, modest, and imposing. And then comes the second half of the question, which is which 2 are synonyms.
Yeah.
And again, in year 6, I would expect the average child to know that synonyms has the same meaning.
Yeah.
Means the same thing.
Words that mean the same.
So grand, modest, and imposing. My opinion is it's very obvious that modest is the odd one out there.
Yeah.
And I would be saying, okay, well, even if you didn't know what these words completely meant, grand and imposing, in my opinion, if you're at a higher level of your GPS understanding and if you can identify adjectives and synonyms means the same thing, I actually think this is a really good question to test that. Can you identify synonyms even if you're unsure what words fully mean? And again, my point is, we need to have a scale of difficulty on questions. Otherwise, we just go for the lowest common denominator and the whole test would be really easy. So, for example, a synonym question might be match the synonyms at its most basic level.
Yeah, and there was one like that earlier on.
There you go. So this clearly has been designed to put 2 kind of strands together, which alone can be quite simple. Then make it tricky because the words are tricky as well with word meaning. Yeah. And I think it's a really good last question, is my opinion. And what was your biggest issue with the question? And let's dive into that.
Let's dive, because it's almost like it's not like I just fundamentally disagree with that, because I actually do overall.
It's a separate point, I think.
I think it is a good last question, because I think you can solve it in a really interesting way. Like you said, if you read the modest cottage stood out amongst its imposing neighbours.
Yeah.
From that sentence alone, even if you didn't know what modest and imposing meant, knowing their adjectives, the way their sentence is phrased, they mean opposite then. So that immediately gets rid of one of them. And then you just have to work out...
Does grand mean modest or does grand mean imposing?
Yeah, exactly that. So with test technique, I think you can solve this question, and it's a really good last hard question. My problem with it was just literally like the raw understanding of synonyms. I don't think that in this sentence, and that's what I want to stress, it says... are synonyms in the sentence below. I don't think grand and imposing are synonyms in that sentence. I know they are synonyms outside of the context of this question, but I just don't think they are synonyms. They're not close enough in meaning to actually be synonyms.
So my point here is you're imposing, in a different definition, by the way, as a verb, because this is imposing as an adjective. You are you are projecting your understanding of these words onto this sentence. In that sentence, they are actually used for size.
Are they?
Yeah. The street was lined with grand houses. Okay, let's just imagine it, they mean big, okay? The street was lined with big houses. The small cottage stood out amongst its big neighbours. Yeah. It absolutely, from the author's point of view, you are kind of saying, well, it's not used in this way. And I was like, well, it could be. It absolutely could be. And because if we swap big, then that's exactly what the author means. And my only point here is, if you search what is the definition of imposing, the first word in the definition is grand.
Yeah, and I'm not going to disagree with that.
But my point is, those 2 words literally mean large. And I think an argument that says, well, I don't use it, I use them in different contexts, is just irrelevant. They literally just mean big. That's where we disagree.
Yeah. I don't think it's irrelevant. I think it's relevant enough to confuse children in this, because...
But I think it's supposed to confuse them.
Yeah, I get it. That's why it's question 50. Yeah. But I just think it went a bit too far. I don't know. Maybe it didn't.
Well, you're saying earlier in the text, it had a very simple synonyms question. Yeah. So how on earth do we make synonym questions harder? There's only 2 ways, in my opinion, to make synonyms question harder. One, pick words that no children will know, and that is pointless.
No, I think you could do that without the context of the sentence. But that would be just as hard if it was like grand and imposing. Are they synonyms or antonyms?
No, this is my point, though. Like, if what we're doing here is we're making it trickier, because... if we just did it straight up 2 words that children won't have heard of, that is literally either you're testing word knowledge then. Like, you're not actually testing if you know what synonyms are. What I think this question does really well is you can know what synonyms are and get to the right answer without actually fully knowing what these words mean. It is actually only testing what synonyms are.
Do you think, this is an interesting thought I had when I was talking to someone about it, Do you think that this question would be easier to do if you had never actually experienced the words grand and imposing in real life before? So you had no understanding of them or not?
It depends how you've come across them. I think there's a lot of assumption going on.
So my point is you've never seen the word grand or imposing before. So it's like you're just going back to like, you're just using the whole thing that, well, I know modest and imposing must be opposite based on that sentence. And you're using that technique versus children who maybe have a really good understanding of, well, they've seen grand used loads in text and they've seen imposing used loads in text.
Yeah.
I guess my overall point here is I think it's a disadvantage to know what they mean. And because I think the overlap is so small and not used in real life. Like grand is exclusively used to mean positive. It is though, isn't it?
It's not exclusive. It is
though.
I don't think so.
No one uses grand. It will never be used not to be a positive connotation.
Yeah, it's very often. But and again, okay, so I guess my whole point, stepping back again, there is fine. Like it is used as a positive word, but it's always used to mean big. And if someone uses it in a way that doesn't mean big, they're using the word incorrectly. Yeah. You can't, in a test go, well, some people get this wrong, so we won't put it in. No, that's the reason why it's been put in. Because if someone uses grand and it's not large, then they're wrong. That is not what the word means.
True.
And if someone's using imposing only in a negative context, that doesn't mean it doesn't mean big. It means big and scary.
Yeah, but the point is you can argue that doesn't mean big in that one. Imposing neighbours, that is probably more often used to mean like neighbours that are like literally like getting in your way. They're overbearing or they're overwhelming.
That's
like
using the verb, not the adjective.
No, I can describe my neighbours.
Encroaching on someone.
No, I've got imposing neighbours. I could say that house is exactly the same size as mine, but
Why
I could say
imposing
to you,
then? They're not imposing. That's my point. You're using the word wrong. You haven't got imposing neighbours because they're no bigger than you.
No, I could be describing them as imposing. Surely.
How?
Because they're overbearing. They're overbearing.
Yeah, so large in a different sense.
Yeah, but like metaphorically.
Yeah, why not? Large still means big.
Yeah, but why is that doesn't have to be physical size, right?
No,
I could describe my neighbours as imposing without specifically meaning they are physically massive.
I also think in that case you're using a slightly different definition.
Yeah, but you don't know what the definition is. It could be either in that one. There's no reason to believe that.
So are you saying
imposing neighbours is talking about the size of the house?
So do you think never in synonyms questions we should use words that have more than one meaning?
No, but there is no way to actually know in that one. You just have to assume.
There is, because it's either modest or grand. Like there are no other synonyms in that question.
No, I know, but I'm just saying you could argue. And we're just going to assume that when we say imposing neighbours, we're talking about the size of the houses, whereas it could very legitimately mean they're imposing in a different way.
That's fine, but I'm saying, so in any case where there's more than one definition for a word, you could say, well, it might mean this.
Yeah, that's fine, but the next word should actually just make it clear that it is one context or the other, if it's important.
I don't know. I think I just disagree. I think this is just a hard question, and I can't get over the fact that they literally mean the same thing. Like, honestly, someone could sit there for an hour and explain to me how they've used it wrong in the past, or other people might use it in a different context. Like, my response always would be, yeah, but they mean big.
I reckon even taking out the in the sentence below would actually help a little bit in terms of they're just synonyms, because I just think that's such a big argument for that they're not. They're as far away from synonyms as it gets in the context of that sentence with two words that are technically synonyms, dictionary definition. That's my point, I guess, overall.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because I've just gone for the black and white route of...
Yeah, they are synonyms though.
They mean the same thing though.
Yeah, no, I know, I get it. Yeah, and it's not wrong like that. So I will make that really clear. Yeah. I don't think this question is incorrect or wrong. I just think it's really hard. And I was trying to explore why I think it's hard.
I'd love to know what you guys think. I don't want people to think I'm saying it's an easy question. No. It's a hard question. I'm simply arguing that it's not a bad question.
Yeah, it's solvable.
Yeah, it's a hard question which isn't wrong.
Yeah, and lots of kids would have got it right. With the exact logic trains that we've thought of, and they wouldn't have remotely thought about what I'm thinking of.
No.
I just...
or they might have known that grand and imposing both mean big, because they do.
Yeah. Which is true. I can't argue with that. They do mean big.
Cool. There's another question. Yeah. This was in a maths. I found this fascinating. I want to explain exactly what happened in this situation. So this is from the maths paper for year 6 children who are 10 and 11-year-olds. What did someone find? Okay,
well, let's do it in a more interesting way. Okay, I'm going to read out 2 questions to you, and I want you to you can tell me, and you can think, if you're listening, what the difference is, really, I guess. So here's one question, okay? Let's zoom in, I can't read it. Chen, good old Chen. Chen buys these 4 items.
I wonder what test this was from. With Chen.
Yeah, Chen. Okay, Chen buys 4 items. You've got 670 grams of apples for £1.50, 400 grams of bread for £0.70. Well, I'm reading it as it says. I don't know more than 70p. That's what it says. It's all in pound with the pound sign. Not
every
not
time
pence.
something's in pence, use £0.
Yeah, £0. 500 grams of butter, but there's no price. And then there's 750 grams of cereal for £1.45. And it says Chen pays for the 4 items with a £10 note, The price of the butter is not shown. She receives £3.85 change. So what was the price of the butter?
That's a fantastic question.
Great question. I love that question. I think it's really good. And then here's another question I'm going to read to you. Danny buys 1 loaf of bread for £1.20, 1 bottle of milk for 70p. It says 70p this time. 2 packets of cheese for £2.30 each packet. Danny pays with a £10 note. He says, I should get £3.30 change. Is Danny correct? You must show how to get your answer. They're two very different, two very similar questions. One is from the Year 6 SATs and one is from GCSE.
Wow.
And people might already be like, oh, that's crazy. I don't think that's crazy because actually the GCSEs does go right back. And like the SATs has Year 3 questions in it. The GCSE also has some easier questions in it. That's fine.
I'd argue the GCSE one's actually easier.
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit easier.
The missing unknown, Yeah,
exactly that. And the problem people were having this, so I got this from Facebook. The problem people were having was that GCSE one gives you 3 marks.
Right.
And it's 2 marks for the SATs question. And their point was, for God's sake, why are 11-year-olds expected to do this kind of in 2 steps? Because it can be done in 2 steps, by the way, both of them. But like in GCSE, they're awarded kind of more marks. And I guess the straight up counter argument could be, I don't know, maybe everything proportionally gives you more marks in GCSEs, in which case it's an irrelevant comparison then if everything gives you a bit more marks anyway.
I would also argue that the GCSE one, there are 2 steps mathematically, but then you also have to explain whether he's right or wrong.
Yeah.
So you are actually doing another step there.
Yeah.
So it says, is Daisy correct? You must show evidence. So you're getting your 2 marks for doing your maths, and then you've got to write a sentence to explain.
I'm not sure you do actually, because is Danny correct? Could just be yes or no. And I think the evidence is just the maths, like it would be in the.
I'm not seeing the mark scheme for GCSE. I'm assuming there's a mark for saying yes or no.
You must show how you get your answer. I presume.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe not.
But yeah, it's an interesting comparison, isn't it? How they're firstly the same sort of question, and secondly the marks are different. Easier. 4 years later.
There was something else with that question I saw a lot of people say, and I really disagree with them again, which is that in this question you've just described, again, if you remember Hayden reading it out, he read all the weights of the items that they purchased, and at no point in the question are the weights used to get to the answer.
They're not relevant.
And my opinion on that is that I completely sympathise with people who say, oh, they're 10 and 11. Why are we giving them information they don't need to solve a question? Because it's hard enough to understand that they've got to find the total of the amount that's there, work out the change, and then what's left still for how much the butter would. And I would completely agree with those people. And I would say if the weights were in this question, I wouldn't bat an eyelid. I'd be like, cool, that's still a fantastic question. I still think it's a fantastic question, but I think it's fair in a problem-solving question to put information that children have to decide whether it's relevant or not.
Yeah.
And I would argue that it's not hard in that question to very quickly figure out that the grams aren't relevant. And that's a very small step to take in terms of problem solving. And I would say that is testing problem solving. And for a child finishing primary school, I think it's acceptable to expect a child to know that they don't need to know the grams.
I agree. Even though it's maybe an overload of information, it is so easy to tell it's not relevant, isn't it, in that question? I think people's more wider point was that there's not a problem with this question. It's more that it happened too often in the paper. People were saying there were just one too many questions where they were just putting in these really intricate traps of extra information they don't need. And it was like, okay, we get the point. It's kind of like you talking about the answer box.
Yeah.
In arithmetic, it was like, we get the idea that it's good to see if they can interpret the answer box in a different place, but 8 times? Because if they can't, now they got it wrong 8 times. It's like, do we really need to make every single question have all these extra information that's not needed? I think that was the overall point. And I don't really think that was the case. I think people were exaggerating a little bit. I thought most of the paper was okay. The second paper was just particularly tricky. And you know what? The last 5 or 6 questions on the reasoning papers are traditionally much, much harder. Really high level Year 6 reasoning problem solving questions.
That's why it's actually in my opinion, a very high level to get to greater depth in maths. I think it's a really good achievement.
Yeah.
And if a child gets greater depth in their Year 6 SATs, I think they're a fantastic mathematician.
Yeah, definitely. It's very hard to get that. Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy.
Whereas I would say reading, although I'd say you're a fantastic reader.
Thank you.
I'd say getting great depth in reading is still obviously really impressive, but I would expect it from more children.
Do you think?
Yeah. No, just from what I see in terms of the marks a bit lower. There's a lot of test technique to get there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I would say that there are a lot more fantastic readers than fantastic mathematicians, just from my day-to-day experience with them.
Quick question for you. It's slightly sidetracked, but it's still SATs related. I was having a discussion with our SLT recently because, for context for everybody else, our school at the moment, we're just going through some English changes. We're trying to just up-level our English, really, our whole curriculum. So we're really thinking about it and taking it slowly and just making sure we get the foundations right. And we were having a discussion about reading, and I forgot what I was going to say. What were you just saying? Why is that gone from my head? What were you just saying?
It's so
what
funny.
What was the literal
I was
sentence you
talking
said?
about in general as a teacher.
Oh my God, what's going on?
You do have amnesia.
Yeah.
As a teacher in general, I think there are more better readers.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to finish what I'm saying. No? I'm going to finish what I'm saying.
Again, please
there are more better readers, and I'm interested in what people think about this. There are more people I'd put at a high level of reading than a high level of maths. I mean, it's harder to get to a high level of maths.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. That's fair enough. Cool. Back to my point because I've remembered it now. So to get expected in reading.
Good job we stopped editing, wasn't it? We could be straight into this.
Yeah,
right
I
now,
could have.
But these guys have sat through me talking now and Hayden having a moment where his eyes honestly died inside.
Yeah, I was like, so to get expected in reading,
you got it still?
Right? Got it still.
Okay.
Generally across the years, about half the marks on a reading paper gets you expected, right? Which is quite pretty
much half all of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
half
pretty
maths,
much.
Half
Sometimes a bit more,
GPSE-ish.
but whatever. It's around half. And my point is always when I was talking to SLT, I was like, I reckon we could never, ever, ever teach comprehension in the style of testing, right?
Sure.
We just teach kids to read and like books, and it wouldn't really make a difference to our data because I fundamentally believe that those papers are forgiving enough that children that can just read at age expected level will get expected anyway.
This is kind of what I'm getting at. I agree. That's what I mean. Like when I say if you're just a really good reader, you will just do well on that test.
Yeah, that's what I think. I really do believe that, and I'd be willing to bet that. Obviously, it's not the kind of bet that some schools will be like, okay, let's just gamble it.
Yeah,
then.
you weren't worried about it.
But I really think that's
agree.
true. It's such a low threshold to get age expected. It's like, test technique might have got you an extra 3 marks.
And will test technique help children who can't read properly suddenly read properly?
No, it just helps them force
maybe
some data.
get over the line. Maybe
looks good for the school, but they're not better readers.
Do they love reading?
Yeah.
Do they get exposed to loads of genres? That's why whole class reading is fantastic, and it's the way to go.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
So I'm all for that now. I'm really I've really switched my mindset away from because we've done a lot of test style questions in the past, where you look at old papers and you go, right, 3 mark, the classic. Any teacher listening will know this.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at 3 mark questions, guys, and how to answer them. You need 2 points and 1 evidence.
There's only ever 2 that come up on a paper.
Yeah,
it's so easy to get 1 or 2 marks.
Yeah, even without any understanding of how those questions work. Genuinely,
you know what? I completely agree.
Yeah.
Shift the mindset, enjoy reading, get better at reading. That's all that matters.
I don't have a problem with people saying it, by the way. I don't have a problem with someone saying to their kids, this is how you answer these efficiently.
Of course, yeah.
But doing it to death, years and years and years and years, over and over and over, lessons all the time, like it's just unnecessary. Just focus on getting your kids to like reading books. That is it. They will pass the test if they just like reading and therefore can read.
And that is the wider issue with the tests at all.
Yeah.
Is that it's only because they exist that we're even having this discussion.
Yeah, that ironically we probably stopped teaching kids to read as well.
If the SATs didn't exist, right, it wouldn't even be a question as to how we do English.
Yeah.
We'd be like, what? Yeah, we're going to read a book.
Yeah.
We're going to read this amazing book with these kids and they're going to love it.
I would go as far as arguing that kids would be better readers on average across the whole country if we didn't have SATs.
Yeah.
Because I think our natural instinct would be to do it right.
But how would Gillian Keegan in her election campaign say every 5 minutes that we've got the best readers in the Western world?
Yeah, it's like, they can pass the tests, mate.
Do we have the best readers in the Western world? Well, do you know what? It comes at a horrible price that kids resent reading.
Yeah, it's a shame Labour brought in too much testing, wasn't it, Dylan?
Yeah, they did. And we're going to talk about politics right now, actually. We're going to go into it. We've had quite a long episode so far, but we do really want to talk about this election, so let's talk about it.
Cool.
This week, well, if you're listening, I guess last week, it was announced that the general election will be happening on the 4th of July. Okay, you don't get scared.
I get scared of you.
Anyone listening to this knows that there is a theme running through our podcast where we're not worried about talking about politics, basically, and holding people to account. So I wanted just to start by saying we will talk politics in these next few weeks. It's just bound to happen.
Can I start by saying sorry in advance? I'm really sorry. Dylan is unbelievably passionate about politics. So.
I am passionate. However, I want to just outline a few things. I found a lot interesting in the last week or so. And I found myself in a position that I've never been in during an election.
Yeah.
So I want to lay it all out there. But the point is, there's going to be a general election. We knew it was coming this year. No one thought it was going to be in the 4th of July. I can hear the Hayden's little river.
The river's having a paddy outside his door.
I thought, no, it'll be at the end of the year. Lots of people thought that because why would Rishi Sunak do one sooner? He's so far behind. But he's called it. Yeah. It's going to be in the middle of the Euros, middle of the summer. Very random. Anyway, so I just want to start off by saying to people, we said we were going to talk about the election this week. And straight away, I thought to myself, right, God, I need to brush up. I need to brush up on my knowledge about this. I want to get things right if I'm going to be sat on a podcast talking about it, putting it out to people and clearly saying my views and opinions. And I know for a fact, Hayden, you probably thought I don't know anything about politics.
Yeah, because I'm way less into politics than you. I really try to avoid it at most.
And a lot of people do. And a lot of people I spoke to at school kind of said, what does that mean then when I said there'll be an election? I was like, I had to remember that not everyone's me. Like on Wednesdays at lunchtime, I put Prime Minister's questions on. Like that's just whether it's happening or not. That's just what I do, whether it's an election. So I know that I am part of the less than 1% of people who really keep up with this kind of stuff. But then I thought to myself, I don't need to brush up. No, I don't actually, and you don't either.
No,
and that's really important because this is a general election. Everyone gets a vote. So actually, us like swatting up on stuff beforehand and getting all knowledgeable about, it's exactly this. That's not really representative, is it? Because if we weren't doing this podcast, you'd trundle through your life and then come July the 4th, you'd vote for who you're going to vote for.
I represent you normal people out there that will just sort of read the odd headline, the odd article, and then get overwhelmed by it all and just wait for Dylan to tell you what's going on.
We have a little chat and just dive straight in. So I hope people at home, feel free, please fact check us. A lot of it's just going to be opinion. A lot of it.
I don't have any facts.
And then we'll talk about that. So,
go on. Where do you want to start?
I've been making some Instagram reels. Okay, so straight away. So I'll be really honest. I'm going to lay my cards on the line here.
Table.
Yeah. Wow. That's made up. Maybe I'll say it again. I am incredibly.
Sorry. Go on.
I am incredibly excited by the prospect of the Conservatives not being in power anymore.
Yeah.
I am incredibly anti-conservative. I think the whole idea of what they stand for, and more importantly, what they've actually done, I'm talking about a track record now, since 2010, is dreadful. And I've seen the decimation of education, having worked in it as well. And I've seen the decimation of funding. And I've seen the level of standards that we allow our children to get drop off, and the only reason those levels are where they should be is because of the hard work and determination of people who work in school. So I don't think the government have done any favours for us whatsoever, but we've seen there's only so much we can actually do without correct funding, and we've seen the provision for our most vulnerable kids drop through the floor. We've seen it in front of us. We've seen that we can't afford our heating bills anymore because the energy price cap came in for households, but it did not come in for schools, because it's classed as like a business or a separate thing. So schools never got a cap on their energy prices. They just doubled. Schools are ordering books and paper for their children to do stuff in. That cost has just doubled. Yep. I was talking to the person who orders books in our school. 2 years ago, it cost £1,500 to get all the books for the year. Now it costs £2,800 to get all the books for the year.
No more budget.
So I said to him, it's a good job at least budget's doubled, sarcastically. And he went, no, they haven't. I was like, I know. I'm just joking. Yeah. But these are the things that you don't see. And that £1,300 extra that we've got to find now for the books just to deliver children the curriculum, that has to come from somewhere. Yeah. So that's coming from, I don't know, maybe a TA we can't afford
By the way,
anymore.
we're talking about exercise books. We're not even talking about like actual reading, but we're talking about blank books for them to write their work in. Exactly. Quick thing about actual books, by the way. Had a discussion with our SLT the other day, and we were trying to think of other ways around buying books because we literally can't afford the reading books.
Yeah.
Literally can't afford them. It's like we do not have the budget. We're going to have to think of another way to show kids books. So I was like, brilliant.
The big thing that I wanted to talk about here is, and I want people to understand this, like whatever you want to vote for, whoever you, there are a lot of people sat there going, but I don't like Labour. I like Labour, probably the least I've ever liked Labour right now. In terms of, they're not exciting to me. They seem very close to the Conservatives on a lot of stuff in terms of policy.
Yeah.
And I really want them over the next few weeks to come out with some stuff. I've seen they want to lower the voting age. That's brilliant to me. That's very anti-establishment to me. I like that because I don't think many people in places of power would actually be thinking that's a good idea, because it would.
Yeah, it tends to be against. Traditionally, younger people vote Labour and older people vote Conservative.
So of course it makes sense for Labour to want to do that.
Yeah.
So I quite like that. But you know what? Ignore that for a second, because what winds me up and I want people to do more of instead is judge on what's happened the people who have been in charge for 14 years.
Rather than imagine what other people might have done in charge, And
I can't deal anymore with anything going wrong and someone saying, because Gordon Brown sold the bloody gold for peanuts. No, it's not though, is it? Yeah. It's not because of something that happened in 2008, really, at this point. Austerity was a choice, and you might argue it was a good choice. We had to do it because of the global situation, fine. But it was still a choice, the level we went to for the cuts. When someone says, they're all the same, aren't they? They're not. They're not all the same. And that's the point. And do you know what? If they are all the same, right? Let's try the other ones for a bit then.
Yeah.
Let's just see, shall we? So, if Tory and Labour are the same, which they're not, but if they were, okay, cool. Well, have the one thing that I've had power for 14 years. Have you liked what they've done? Do you feel better off because of what they've done? No. Okay. Well, I'll try the other thing that you're saying is the same because it might not be, but
it's
even it's the same.
Grand and imposing, isn't it? It's like, oh, they're all the same. They mean the same. Yeah, they're not really, though, are they? They're never actually used in the same. They're actually completely different and never used the same ever. So,
I don't think Labour and Tory are synonyms. So.
No. Yeah, funny. All the same they are. Carry on.
Well, all the same in that they both mean politicians. So,
I'm only joking. I see your brain like,
I'm worried. Like, what's my argument here?
Give him wrong, actually.
It's against what I think. And the thing that honestly gets me wound up the most, because I've been making quite a few reels about politics, and it's hilarious because some hit the algorithm and they just go to people who've got nothing to do with teaching, obviously, because I'm doing a politics post. And the amount of people I've seen who go, all the same, you should just vote reform. I'm like, that's the thing you shouldn't do. What on earth makes you think that reform are better than them two? Why do you not automatically think reform are the same? Like, because they want to reform. It's in the name. It's like, it's just run by a millionaire who bankrolls his own thing.
You realise there's a bunch of ex-bankers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, this is the establishment you're saying you want to fight against.
On social media, reform is just, I don't know about anyone that's just on like TikTok, Instagram Reels, all
no
sorts
one's
of
on
things.
TikTok, mate, who's above 15 other than you. So.
Cheers for that random bird. But all the comments on anything political is like, I'm voting reform. It is just a flood of it. But do you know what was exactly the same? It was the same with UKIP. Do you remember? Everyone that voted UKIP was unbelievably loud about it. Yeah. Oh, we're going to vote UKIP. We're going to vote UKIP. It's like, okay, I'll just ignore it now. The reform is like, whatever. All
and it's like, okay, you can talk about conspiracies, and if you think I think corporations absolutely are putting their fingers in all the pies and influencing people. And when business come out and say they're supporting Labour now, it's actually a bit of a red flag to me. I don't think that's an amazing thing. I can see why the establishment might think it's a good thing, or the papers or whatever. But when, like, if Walmart, they're American, like, come out and say, or Tesco come out and say, yeah, we're backing Labour, I'm like, that's weird, because for me, Labour stands for the working rights of the people, and I don't feel like you would care much about that at all. So, like, whilst people might be like, oh, that's cool, personally, that's making me less.
Yeah, it just gives you an idea that maybe Labour are more centric than
they are. They're right in the centre. They're right in the centre, and there's a place for centric policy. And someone made a comment, and it was a really good point. I was like, there is a place for being in the centre, right?
Yeah.
If you get stuff done. And it boils down to this for me, because a lot of people are very anti-Keir Starmer, saying, well, he promised to scrap tuition fees when he became leader. He promised to do this, he promised to do that. I was like, okay, that's a fine grievance, because you might have backed him thinking, he wants to stand for this stuff, and now he's not. That's a fair grievance. But what I would say to someone who's saying that is, to be in power, he had to become the leader of the Labour Party. And the way that works is you need to be voted in by its supporters, who foamed at the mouth for Jeremy Corbyn, who's extremely left-wing, and they were thinking of reforming how they even choose it, because the base is so left-wing in the Labour Party that unless you have those left-wing policies, you'll never get chosen as leader.
Yeah.
So he had to do that. This is what, like, someone who's just maybe being a bit more straightforward might say. And then when he became Labour leader, if he ran on the same principles as Jeremy Corbyn, he'd get absolutely rinsed and would never come anywhere near power.
So he had to do something different.
Yeah. So to me, the number one thing you have to do is get in power. And then you can start judging people on a different kind of note. In the same way I've just said, you should judge the Tories and what they've done.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we might hold our noses and vote for Labour, a lot of people, because we just can't stand what the Tories have done. But then what we have to do from day one, if Keir Starmer gets in, is be on his back. It's okay, what are you going to do then?
Yeah,
what are you
going to do?
What are you going to do? Keep him accountable.
Yeah.
And I really don't want to give him a free pass, like a lot of people will. Like what people do for the Tories now.
Yeah.
I would hate if I became that for Labour, and just like something that was clearly wrong, they just went, that's right.
I like Labour. That's all right.
I like Labour, so
yeah,
I'll justify
I
it.
agree.
Okay.
I agree. It's a weird system, isn't it? Very weird.
What's your core instincts now as someone who's not involved in politics? I'm very interested. Right now, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts?
My core instincts is a broken system anyway. It's a two-party system. Literally nothing matters unless you vote Tory or Labour. Genuinely. I get that you can argue the seats and all that, but honestly, it really doesn't matter. If you only care really about who's actually in charge, the only thing you can do at this point, if you don't want Tories in, is vote Labour. That's the way I see it, which I don't like. I don't like that that's a thing.
Or vote tactically.
What do you mean by that? Because to me, that is just voting Labour.
Yeah, so the way the system works, again, is there are 650 seats across the country.
Yeah,
the country is divided into 650. Right. To have a government, you need more than half, because then when someone suggests a law, you've got over half, so it will go through. That's how government works, basically. You just need... So we could technically work on a government where no one has more than half. That's what coalitions are for.
Yeah.
They basically say, we'll work together and we'll all vote yes.
Yeah.
So we get past halfway. Or you might work for minority government. I think Theresa May for a bit had one where she was 8 seats less than half. So that's why she had to deal with the DUP.
Right.
The Irish people
to make up some of
who said, okay, well, we're not necessarily a coalition, but we've got a deal. You'll vote through our policies. We'll give you £1.5 billion. That's basically what happened.
Yeah.
So there's deals to be made. Voting tactically is simply saying every single individual seat, you look at the general vibe of the population and you vote for whoever is the best party in terms of number of votes that isn't Conservative.
Yeah.
So, and this is what I would do.
Sure.
So I'm much more anti-Conservative than pro-Labour. But in my constituency where we live, the second place was Labour. So I'm voting for Labour.
Yeah.
So and the point of voting tactically would be if you really support the Lib Dems or the Greens or even Reform, whoever it is, if you are more anti-Tory than you are pro any kind of Labour or any other one, you would say, okay, well, I want them to not be a Conservative MP. So I'm going to give my vote to Labour this time.
Yeah, because they're the ones that are going to get most likely to get it.
So in my constituency, if someone said they're going to vote Lib Dem or Green, I would say to them, would you consider holding your nose and voting Labour? Otherwise, Conservatives will get in because we need to get past the Conservative vote.
Yeah. What a stupid system, right?
Yeah, it's completely broken. And I completely agree. And a lot of people go, that's not right. And I'm like, it's not right, but it's the system we have. So actually...
So we've got to use it for now.
Yeah, all you need to do is Google tactical vote or vote tactically. And there's literally websites where you can put a postcode in. It'll show you the breakdown and who you should vote for if you want to vote tactically.
Yeah. Absolutely mental to me. Absolutely mental. As someone that's not in the world, I just think... I don't know what to think about it. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, I will be voting Labour for that exact reason. And I probably would vote Labour anyway.
If you were somewhere where Labour were literally polling at like 5% and Lib Dems were 30 and Conservatives were 40, would you still vote Labour?
I know I'd do the tactical thing, 100%. Because like you, I'm more anti-Tory than anything else. I just want them out of power. I don't care who comes in next. I just don't want it to be Tories again. I don't think there's much they could have done to make it worse. And a lot of people always say that, like, oh, it'd be worse if Labour. I'm like, would it? It'd be quite hard. Genuinely, I'm not even disagreeing that it could be. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh no, it couldn't possibly because Labour are great. Like the idea, it's like, no, the idea. I actually don't really care. If Labour and Conservatives switched all of their policies, I'd then be voting Conservative. I'm not against the word Conservative. I just don't like what they've represented generally and what they've done to the country. I think it has diminished in lots and lots of ways when it didn't need to. Some things are out of our control. That's fine. I'll never blame the Tories in the same way I won't blame Labour for the global market crash and things like that. It's like, but there are other things where it has just diminished. Like they have just literally chosen. It did take a footballer to convince them to give kids food. Yes, and it's like stuff like that. I'm like, but that's one example. It's like that happens every year. There's a massive thing like that where they just don't want to help anyone, but they'll line the pockets of their mates visibly and obviously and have a WhatsApp group where they laugh about it and get away with it and have a party during COVID and nothing ever comes of any of it. And I'm sick of that. So I just want to give someone else a chance. I almost don't really care. Do you know what? If Reform UK were the highest voted thing in our thing, they were on 45% and the Conservatives are on 46%.
Careful what you're saying.
I don't know, but I would though. I'd be like, yeah, okay. It knocks off another Conservative seat. Is that not a tactical vote?
I'd rather have a Conservative government than a Reform government. So therefore I wouldn't do that.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like if the choice was between Reform and Conservative, I would absolutely rather have a Conservative government because Reform are just the fringes of the Tories who are left because they're annoyed going, eating their full English, going, how long till a full English is called racist? That's the kind of people who are going to Reform.
Fair enough. This is where I don't know stuff. So knowing that would obviously impact my decision.
But you know, Reform have some policies like they want low tax, they want a written constitution.
Yeah.
There's things that they can say which sound good.
Yeah.
I'm not. Again, it'd be stupid to say that everything about them ever is awful because if they came out and said we want to recruit more teachers, and Labour have said they want to recruit more teachers, it's not now bad because Reform said it. But as a whole, Reform being bankrolled by Richard Tice and his own personal wealth, and having people like Lee Anderson join them, who's just an idiot. Like, that's the vibe. Then I don't want them in charge. I think they'd be terrible.
Where's old Nigel? I know Nigel. He's normally loud around this time.
Lost every single election he's ever been involved in. Never become an MP. He has come out and said that he won't be running because do you know why? Because he's focusing on the US election, which, by the way, is later on in the year.
Because he's mates with Trump.
He's mates with Trump, but he cares so much about Britain. He cares so much about Britain. He couldn't possibly be involved in general election though, because there's an American
it's
one.
No longer beneficial to him.
The reason is because he wouldn't win. That's
he's a celebrity and he got out of it.
Yeah.
So fair enough.
Yeah.
Do you know who has been popping up on my feed recently? Jeremy Corbyn.
Really?
Have you seen he's standing independently in Islington?
Yeah, he'll probably win.
Yeah.
Because he's been around for so long. And that whole idea of, I imagine,
Yeah.
in his seat, he is very well known, and I think I get the impression he's a really good local MP.
Can you explain something to me? Because I actually don't really understand this, and you probably will. So a lot of people were saying, "Oh yeah, Jeremy Corbyn for PM," but he couldn't possibly be taking votes to be the Prime Minister, could he? He's only trying to get a seat in his area, right?
So no one votes for a Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So no one ever actually votes for a Prime Minister.
Party, right? And they choose.
Okay, that's why when Liz Truss took over Boris Johnson and when Rishi Sunak overtook Liz Truss, technically there was nothing wrong with that because people voted for their local MP.
That's cool.
So when
I
we
thought
vote,
that's how it works, but so many people in the comments were like, we're voting for Prime Minister. I was thinking, I don't think that's how I'm pretty sure that's not how it works.
No,
so he's just trying to be voted in there.
And as an independent, he has literally zero chance of becoming Prime Minister. Because even if he got voted in, all that would happen, he would sit in the back benches. Yeah. He'd have one vote every time.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't be at all in a party.
I like the idea of him there though. I like the idea of him there.
Well, this is the thing about Corbyn. I've really shifted off him. But I think that's because it's always the context of he's really, 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 really left. And I wanted to talk to you about this. He's really, really, really left. And that pushes a lot of people out because he's very, very high tax, very, very much, is seen as, an extremist sympathizer.
Yeah.
We can talk about
Super
whether that's
socialist.
true. Yeah, we can talk about how true those accusations are or not. Anti-Semitic because of everything that happened in the Labour Party and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Again, we can talk about whether that's true, whether that's false, whatever. It's like a conversation that is honestly not even relevant anymore because we're living in a different time. But the thing that I find interesting is how influential people on the extremes can be when it comes to running a party. So let's take the Conservative, for example. Right now, Rishi Sunak is very much beholden to the extreme right wing of the Conservative Party. So that's why we've got policies like the Rwanda bill. Yeah. That's why he's trying to really crack down on student immigration to come in our universities, which I don't think anyone who's moderate thinks is bad. Yeah. But he's like, I'm gonna clamp down on that because it makes the right wing of his party happy. They'll keep supporting him and things like that. And the point is, in the current system we have, let's say Labour get a majority of 20. Let's just say they get 20 more than half.
Yeah.
Within that 20, let's say there's 30 or 40 of them out of 380 MPs who are extremely left-wing in the Labour Party. They then have the power to veto any law. So these small minorities, extremes, have huge power in these parties because let's say Keir Starmer wants to bring something very centrist in. The left are like, no, we can't lower tax for rich people for whatever reason. They have the power to vote no, and it won't get through as law, even though it's only about 40 people. Right. Because that number of votes takes you past halfway. And that's what's happened with the Tories a lot in the last few years. Yeah, I get you. Which is the right wing have gone, no, I'm not voting for that, and then they can't get a law through. That's why Theresa May stopped being Prime Minister.
So within their own party, it's like,
because Theresa May couldn't get Brexit done because there was nothing could get through Parliament because the extreme right wing were like, no, it's not right wing, we're not leaving, you want us to stay in the customs union, you want us to stay linked with Europe, nope, not having it. And their own party were blocking them. So my point here is, we could end up seeing, if Labour get a smaller majority, we could end up seeing these small pockets of Labour having a lot of influence, and a lot of people won't like that. It'd be really interesting. A lot of people who voted Labour will be like, I don't know about that.
Get Jezza back.
Oh, God, you're going to open yourself up for a lot of hate, Hayden.
No, I don't really care. I think, because I'm not really that into politics.
Everyone gets broadband, that sounds good.
Yeah, no. Do you know what? Even that's all I resonate with Jeremy Corbyn is I just think he's a nice human being. And I, in my experience of politics, in my whole life, I don't think any other politician is a nice human being. I'm not even joking. I'm not even exaggerating. I genuinely don't think
that is insane.
Single other politician at the top is a nice person. I think they're all horrible, horrible people. Whereas I think Jeremy Corbyn was an actual nice human being. And I don't think it was even fake. I think he genuinely cares about people.
So a couple of things I'm going to come back on very quickly is he's got a lot of anti-Semitic, people saying he's anti-Semitic. So I would be very careful saying that.
To me, that's just been completely derailed and debunked and very much proven to be the cause of big money in Conservative parties.
I don't know. Because there's a lot from inside the Labour Party who've said he was anti-Semitic as well.
It's just nonsense to me. He cares about everyone in the world and he's in his whole life caring about literally everyone, and every action he's ever done proves that he loves and cares about every single human being except Jewish people.
But he also didn't condemn Hamas. He just didn't. He hasn't condemned them in this whole Israel thing.
Have you seen the entire government also not doing that now?
No, they've condemned Hamas.
Oh, it took them a while, didn't it?
What about? They hate Hamas. You mean the Israel government?
No, our government. They were very much for ages. They weren't taking sides, right?
No, they took Israel's side immediately. That was the whole point.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Everyone took Israel's side.
They did take. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, not condemning Hamas is insane.
Yeah.
They're a terrorist organization who attacked and invaded another country and took hostages and killed hundreds of people.
Yeah, sure.
So as soon as someone doesn't condemn Hamas, I am like, that's really weird, and it does stink of anti-Semitism.
Does it ring true the same other way around though? When it was like it took them months to not condemn Israel for literally like decimating Palestinians.
I think there was a bit of a grace period where it was like, you're going to retaliate. But when they're consistently bombing innocent children in Palestine, I think Israel are disgusting as well. All I'm saying here is. It's fine for us to say that's how could you not condemn Israel for literally killing millions of innocent people? That's crazy. Why are they still doing this and cutting off the water and doing war crimes? Okay, but also we can't then ignore people who don't condemn Hamas.
No, but it's the same thing in terms of. But the problem is, Jeremy Corbyn was then derailed. He lost his whole career, and he's anti-Semitic for not doing that. The current government for literally doing the same thing and not condemning Israel for months after they killed millions. But they killed thousands of children. It's
that's
like,
establishment.
They're not racist. They're not racist.
No, but I'm saying they are.
Yeah, I know.
And a lot of people are saying they are.
My point is, it was very active, very differently. Like we'd happily talk about the government now, but it's a grey area talking about Jeremy Corbyn. Oh no, he was those anti-Semitic things. It's like, it's no different to.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, I'm not stood here. You're stood here saying you really like Jeremy Corbyn. I'm not sat here saying I really like Rishi Sunak or I really like Keir Starmer.
No, I know. So
that is the difference.
Yeah,
but
that's my point is you were insinuating that it's a bit dangerous to say you like Jeremy Corbyn.
I think it's also dangerous to say you like Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, but it is okay though. That's completely fine in our society. Like you wouldn't get people could come at me now and be like, you're anti-Semitic now because you like Jeremy Corbyn. It's like, but if I said I liked Rishi Sunak, people wouldn't come at me and say, you hate Palestinians.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people would.
Mental, maybe.
But we got right wing press.
Yeah,
we got the establishment who are considerably right wing, and that's what I don't get when people say like everything's left wing. It's like, what is it? Is it?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm too down in a hole now. Jeremy Corbyn. There's so many logical reasons for it. They're just so obvious that he wasn't anti-Semitic.
I don't know enough. I'm not going to sit here and say he wasn't.
I am, because it's so obvious. It's just mental to me. It's mental to me.
So okay, very quick.
Because he didn't like it. I don't like Israel for what they're doing right now. He just also didn't like them for what they were doing. Literally the same thing years ago.
I agree, and I think anyone being called anti-Semitic for that, I think that's crazy.
And I think that's what
I think there's something being against the state's actions and against a race of people.
Yeah.
But I think not condemning Hamas is anti-Semitic.
Yeah. Do you think so?
Yeah.
Anti-Semitic.
Yeah, I think it's unreal. They are quite clearly a terrorist organisation going after Jewish people.
Yeah. And were they then as well? I don't know.
Yeah, Hamas, 100%.
Yeah,
Hamas, by definition, they're a terrorist group backed by other Middle Eastern countries.
Yeah.
And this is not me saying people who live in Palestine are all anti-Semitic. Yeah. This is me saying an organisation which is a terrorist organisation which attacked on October the 7th Israel because... Well, they want their land back as well. I get that, but they are anti-Semitic. They are anti-Jewish people.
Yeah.
For whatever you can justify as much as you want and say, well, they took their land as whatever. They are anti-Semitic though.
Yeah, sure.
Completely. Netanyahu is Islamophobic. Who's the leader of Israel? He is Islam. That's it. That's Islamophobia.
They hate each other.
That's anti-Semitic. Yeah. That is absolutely true.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Not condemning Hamas to me is completely insane. And if anyone tries to defend Hamas and say that like what they're doing is I would just be like, it's not though. And I know it's a like massively grey area, the whole peace talks and stuff, but not condemning a terrorist organisation for crossing the border and literally murdering innocent people is insane when you're then saying, well, that's what they're doing to Palestine. They're murdering. Yeah, that's awful. Both awful.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's my opinion on that. No, but we're going down a rabbit hole here of macro politics. These nice light-hearted teacher podcasts.
I know, Jesus Christ. I actually kind of forgot we're recording a podcast, and I'm just genuinely. This is the most genuine chat I've ever had. Because you know more than me, and I do actually find it interesting.
I do genuinely. But you do. The expert because I don't.
No, you're not expert. You're not expert, but you know more than me about some of that stuff. Like I didn't know that. Do you know what I mean? I didn't really know that he actively hadn't condemned Hamas.
So what he does really well is he'll be like, someone will say to him, do you condemn Hamas?
Yeah.
And he'll turn into that classic politician that you hate.
Just
and he'll be
avoid
like,
the question.
Of course I don't like it killing innocent people.
Yeah.
So no, but do you condemn what Hamas did? Of course I don't want to see innocent people killed.
Yeah.
Can you just say that you condemn Hamas for what they did as a terrorist organisation?
Yeah.
Look, I think whenever innocent people are killed, it's bad. And then his defenders go, see, he said it. See, he said it. Yeah, but he's doing that politics thing.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas he will very, 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 very comfortably talk about how horrendous the Israeli government are and they should never be doing it.
Yeah.
That's when it's like, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But then when he skirts around doing it the other way, I'm like, there's something there.
It is weird. But the way I see it is he was years ahead of pop culture now. Now everyone finally is suddenly like, you look on any social media ever, it's like, oh, free Palestine. Everyone is now being like, oh, this is a bit mental actually what they're doing. I think he was just years ahead of that. And back then, everyone, when no one knew the full context, it was like, oh, he just hates Jews, done, bye. And it was like, well, it probably is deeper than this though. It probably is deeper because actually I might be able to say the same about 90% of the population in England right now. Then you all hate Muslim, do you?
A lot of
or
people,
do you just not like what Israel are doing?
A lot of people are Islamophobic in this country.
Islamophobic, yeah.
Completely. And the other way, in terms of that's why that's why he's seen even extra as like this. He's this lefty Muslim socialite.
Sure.
Like, well, okay, he's just got a different opinion to you.
But, he probably just saw a horrible inequality and injustice that was happening.
There are certain things that he's done which are a bit weird.
Yeah.
In that respect, and it's like, ooh, and
could have approached it differently.
The whole idea again of like, it was ingrained in the Labour Party, and like there's been reports and stuff. They're worth reading. It's not as straightforward as sure. He's a nice guy. It's like, and everyone else is a bad guy. It's like, do you know what? Rory Stewart was a Conservative MP for a long time, and I really like him because I listened to his podcast. Yeah, and he's left the Tories now because when under Boris Johnson, he was like, "I'm not serving under this guy." And they left.
Fair.
And there's a few Conservative politicians who are good people, but I can't get on board with them that they enable that machine. I'm like, okay, well, I'd never vote for you because I enable that machine. I think you're a nice person, but you have also imposed a cap on benefits. You have also overseen austerity. You also defend austerity. You think the king's the best thing in the world. And I'm like, I don't agree with any of that, but we can be humans on a human level, and I cannot hate you, and I cannot think you're out to get me. I can think that you're trying to help in a different way to me, for sure. But as a machine, my overall arching point here of politics is, for a 14-year machine since 2010, which is literally my adult life, by the way. Literally my adult life has been a Conservative government. I couldn't vote in 2010, but I could vote from then on. My life has not got objectively better for the same what I would be as a 30-year-old at this point. I don't think there's been multiple times where it's been proven that they're just scumbags who are just literally lining the mates' pockets. I don't want them in power anymore, and that's the bottom line for me. So whatever anyone else can say to me, that's great, but if you also don't want them in power, there is things we can do to try and make that happen.
I've got devil's advocate for you because it's been thrown at me before, and it's one of those questions where I think the trick is in the question. You just said life has not objectively got better since you became an adult, but you're in a better opposition right now. You're in a much better position than you were personally 15 years ago.
I really tried to get that in my first answer, and I couldn't get the words out. My trajectory of life, obviously my wealth has improved over time. I think my wealth and well-being and of the country in general would have improved much more on this trajectory, because obviously as you move through time, you yourself, that's why as you grow older, people tend to become more conservative, because they've built their wealth now and they want to hold on to it because it was sort of struggle to get there. On the macro level of the country, if you just took a snapshot in 2010 and a snapshot in 2024, the average person is worse off.
And do you think it's okay to mention these sorts of things, even if you personally have actually benefited quite well?
I've hated it. I've always hated it when someone uses phrase like champagne socialist and stuff, which is essentially just, it's okay for you to like socialism because you're well off. And it's like, what? Tax me more. Like, when we pay tax for our business, like I genuinely never care. I'm like, cool, that's built in. And that's because we need to pay tax. And what I will never understand is people who want to pay, have much lower tax, have big tax cuts, basically. It's like, cool, well, do you want the NHS to work? Do you like this system we have? Because currently it's broken. We've got the highest taxes ever since World War II, and probably the worst systems and care that we have. And this is going to be a hard thing for any government to solve, because we've got an aging population as well who need the services more, but will contribute less tax. And I think the only way to go about it, I'm just saying right now, is some kind of wealth tax. Like if someone sat on a property for 40 years and it's gone from costing 30 grand to 1.2 million, I don't think that person should get all of that money. They've not. All that's happened in that case is
they don't, do they? Why would they get that
socialist change? Well, because they could sell. What I mean is, I don't think that should just stay in the family. I think there should be a really big wealth tax on that.
Oh, okay. Well, no reason, isn't there? Is there not? It's already 40% capital gains
over
and
$1 million
inheritance.
Over $1 million.
There's not.
And if it's your first house, there's no capital gains.
Yeah, there is.
No, it's not. If it's your only property, there's no capital gains tax. It's on the second properties.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So if I sold this house and just didn't buy another house, I'd just get the full profit?
Yeah.
Oh, that's mad. I thought it was 20%.
No, first property, there's no
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought it was all properties.
I'd be very happy to prove them wrong, but I'm completely under the impression that it's second.
It makes sense that it might be. Yeah.
But there is inheritance tax and stuff, and it's like some people want that cut. No. No. Especially for if it's your business and you built stuff up. I do see that differently from living in a home that you got when it happened to be affordable, and now it's worth 1.2 million. Like, that is just honestly nothing. And again, Rishi Sunak, look at his numbers, because he's made millions, right, through investments and stocks and shares. The idea that is taxed less than actual work is insane to me. And that should be immediately fixed.
Passive income. Yeah, he didn't trade time for.
Like someone working as a nurse who earns 40 grand a year pays a higher percentage of tax on their income than Rishi Sunak pays on his millions.
Than Rishi Sunak does on interest he got for those 40 grand.
Yeah, interest or investments or dividends or anything like that. The threshold is lower. We take dividends through our company.
Yeah.
If they turn around and said dividends are going to be taxed exactly in line with income, we'd pay more tax. I also don't think we'd have a leg to stand on pretending that was not fair. Yeah, we'd have less money, right? But I think that's where you've got to stand on a moral duty and say, well, we are also just working. You know, that is our work, so why should it not be the same as a tax on work?
I agree.
It's insane to me. And that's where a lot of people will be like, nah. Like, especially when you're talking about Rishi Sunak's level, I think the system's okay at the minute. I mean, why would we change that? It's not fair.
Yeah, it's your benefit from it.
I pay way more tax than you. Yeah, but as a percentage you don't.
Yeah.
The idea that I think Rishi Sunak pays something like 26% on his tax, it worked out. He earned 4 million and paid about 1 million in tax.
Yeah.
If you earn 40 grand and spend 12 grand on tax, that's a high percentage that's going on tax.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. And it doesn't matter that it's $1 million to 12 grand.
Yeah, I said it doesn't have a place, does it? Because a lot of people do confuse that. Like, well, he did put $1 million into the system. It's like, okay.
He took 3 million out.
Yeah, he got a lot more. Like, his life is better though.
Yeah,
so.
because he had money in the first place to put into these investments and stuff.
Yeah, I hate that argument.
It's unbelievable.
This episode's going really long, and we haven't actually done any of the things we planned. What do you want to do?
Well, yeah, we should probably end it.
Yeah.
I'm going to come to you maybe with. Well, I guess we can summarise what we're going to say here with New Labour.
We're not going to not talk about this again. Why don't we save this for next episode and talk about it properly?
Because we were going to talk about like what Labour did last time and how much of it was good, how much of it was bad.
To put people off. If you sat through this,
we won't. No. We'll put it in a way that's digestible because again, lots of people who listen are teachers. We're going to talk about education in particular. Yeah. What do we want to actually see happen?
Yeah, and we're going to reflect on New Labour when they were in and what they did for education. Compare it to the last 15 years and maybe think about
what can we actually do in the future to make education better.
And we're not just going to be like silver linings. We're going to be looking at
a lot of what Labour done was probably bad.
Yeah. We'll reflect on all of it. We're not just going to pick out the good stuff. So stick around for that.
And we've got some questions from people, and I'll just knock them onto next time.
Yeah. He's been sat, bless him. Poor dude, he's been sat with his phone.
If you sent us a question, I am sorry.
Do you want to do one?
I am sorry. Should I do one question?
End. This is the end.
Okay. So the only question here is, let's go for. Okay. You've got to vote here. You've got to tell me for the last question. Should I do the incredibly one that made me like burst out laughing and was just really provocative?
Yeah.
Or should I do the one where you can actually give me a proper answer?
Provocative one, because we've had a lot of serious chats.
Okay. Provocative question. It'd be nice to end on this, actually. Okay. Someone wrote this in. I said, any questions for podcast? We can talk about politics, but it could be about anything, but mostly about politics. Go on. Question. Any idea how on earth there are people who work in schools that actually vote Tory? I just don't understand it.
I have an idea, because you know what? It's people like me, I'm not saying I vote Tory, who don't really get that involved and probably just have lots of other influences that say, do this. Loads of people just vote based on what their family tell them to do.
Or who just don't really care as much about education as they do about like social wars and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I've talked to people who worked in a school who said they vote Tory, and their whole point was, they're going to do something about immigration, aren't they?
Yeah. And last one, all big corporations generally vote Tory. They got a lot more money back in them. There's a lot more money to brainwash you into thinking certain ways. So it's got to work on some level, hasn't it? Otherwise they wouldn't keep doing it.
So instead, listen to this podcast, and with our very, very tiny budget of £0, we will try and brainwash you the other way instead.
Wait, sorry, we've got the one legitimate one, or they just think Tory's better and they vote for them legitimately. I forgot that could be a thing.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Which is fair enough, to be honest with you.
It's fine. If you want to see the decimation and the absolute destroying of the funding for our children and children going hungry and the whole macro level of children coming into school with like dirty clothes more often because their family don't have any money at all and there's no support whatsoever before school, and then they come and they can't even be toilet trained, and then we've got to have much more pressure as teachers, and actually our jobs got worse over time. If you liked all that, vote Tory.
And if you want to see tuition fees go from nothing to something and SATs becoming the most important thing of schools, then vote Blair. Right. We'll talk about this next week.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.